Hi there, I'm Peter Russell from supertax.ca. Welcome to another one of my video blogs. Today's topic is going to be on the charitable donations and gifts non-refundable tax credit available here to Canadians. This is a brief and general understanding. I also have an example of how to calculate this non-refundable tax credit, and we're going to go through that at the end of the video. Now, we can find this tax credit on line 349 of your T1 General Canadian Income Tax Return, specifically Schedule 1. Now, what's different from this tax credit compared to other non-refundable tax credits is, if it doesn't make sense to utilize your donations for the current tax year, you can carry them forward for up to 5 years. Now, what's the limitation on donations in a given year? Well, for this tax credit, the most you can donate for this tax credit is up to 75% of your net income for tax purposes on line 236. There are some situations where you can donate up to 100% of your net income. Those situations are usually when the taxpayer dies during the year or the taxpayer has donated capital property. Now, when we calculate the donation tax credit, and let's say, for example, we've made a donation of $1,000. The first $200 of that donation, the tax credit on that amount would be 15%. That is the low margin rate here in Canada. The donation made above the $200, the $800, and any other donations made on your tax return would be eligible for the 29% federal tax rate, which is the top marginal rate. Now, this would also correspond to your provincial component of your donation tax credit. So, say for example, here in Ontario, the low margin rate would be 5.05% for the first $200. The high margin would then be applied to the remainder of the donation and any other donations made after that. That rate would be 11.16%. That is the top Ontario marginal rate here. Now, what exactly is a donation? Well, a donation is when you voluntarily give a gift to a qualified donee. Usually it's at fair market value. Now, what's a qualified donee here in Canada? Well, for this tax credit, a qualified donee is usually a registered charity. An example is the War Amps or the Heart and Stroke Society, the Heart and Stroke Foundation, the Canadian Cancer Society, the United Way. They're all good examples of a registered charity. It could also be your neighborhood church you attend, or your synagogue, or your temple. A qualified donee can also be the government, such as a donation made to the federal government, the provincial government, or your municipal government. A university can also be a qualified donee, and there's also some situations where some foreign universities can also be eligible. Now, what exactly is an eligible gift? Well, I'm going to describe two examples here. Now, let's say someone comes to my door and wants a donation for the Heart and Stroke Foundation. I decide to give that individual $20, and they either give me a receipt on the spot or they send me a receipt in the mail for $20. Well, that is at fair market value of $20. It's a cash transaction. I have given a cash donation and I've received a receipt for $20 of fair market value. Now, let's suppose I give a donation of $100 to, say, a registered dance corporation, which is a charity, and they decide to give me, because I gave them $100, they decide to give me a ticket to an upcoming event to attend. Let's say that the event is $10 per person and there's a ticket. Well, they've given me value back for my donation of $100. That is what is called an advantage. So the eligible gift in that situation would be $100, the fair market value of what I have gifted to the dance corporation, less the advantage they have given me, which is $10 of a ticket to attend an event in the future or the next day or whenever it is. So the eligible gift I would report on my tax return would be $90 in that situation. Now, I've also mentioned that you don't just have to donate cash for a donation or a gift. It can also be a donation of capital property. Capital property can be personal use property, such as your sailboat or your car. It can be real property, such as land or a building, such as a cottage. Or it can be investment property, such as publicly traded securities, mutual fund units, or debt obligations. Now, the important thing to understand about donating capital property is you may have to report a capital gain on your tax return if you transfer this capital property at fair market value as a donation. There are some exceptions. When you contribute certain capital properties, such as investment property like publicly traded securities, debt obligations, or mutual fund units, generally you are exempt from any capital gains tax on those transactions. Now, I'm going to walk you through my example now of how to calculate a basic charitable donation non-refundable tax credit using both the federal and the Ontario tax credits here. So let's go to my big board. And if you've viewed any of my other videos, you've seen my big board before. My charitable donations example. So I mentioned to you before, the limit for charitable donations in 2011 is 75% of your net income. So my net income on line 236 of my T1 general income tax return would be $100,000. 75% of that is $75,000. I have made, say in this example, $10,000 of donations to a registered charity. So it's definitely under my limit, so I can put the entire $10,000 towards my charitable donations and gifts non-refundable tax credit. So how do we calculate the income tax credit? The first $200 is taxed at the federal rate of 15%, which equals $30. The remaining donation, which is $9,800, which is $10,000 less $200, times 29% is equal to $2,842. The total amount, $2,872, would be reported on box 349 of our total non-refundable tax credits, and that non-refundable tax credit total helps reduce your basic federal tax. Now, on the provincial component, for Ontario, I'm going to use the example, the same amount, $10,000. The first 200 would be multiplied by the low Ontario margin rate of 5.05%, equaling $10.10. The remainder, $9,800, would be multiplied by the high margin rate in Ontario of 11.16%, equaling $1,093.68. The total Ontario non-refundable tax credit for charitable donations would be $1,103.78, would be reported on box 5896 of your Ontario general return. That would help reduce your Ontario basic tax. Okay. Well, I hope you found this video informative on charitable donations and gifts. If you have any further questions, please leave a note below, or you can send me an email at peter@charlesrussell.ca or peter@supertax.ca. Thank you very much.